r/ask Reddit. What did that one teacher do to you that you'll never forget? 3rd grade Mrs. Jones. My dad had just deserted us and we were suddenly destitute. She bought my school pictures for us and paid my lunch bill all year. She never said a word about it, only found out later. Bless her. In 5th grade I had this teacher who was very gruff. Most of us didn't like her because she was such a hard ass, like military style with discipline and homework completion. She wasn't mean, but she wasn't nice either. Then I found out my parents were getting a divorce. I showed up to school one day visibly upset, kinda shaky, and had obviously been crying. She basically grunt-rasped decidedly undecided. Hallway. Now, I was so not in the mood to be scolded and I knew I was a mess. I stomped out into the hallway. She told me she knew what was happening at home, asked me if I was okay, then listened to me sob and break down about how I felt. She gave me a hug and asked if I wanted to spend an hour or so in the library since she knew I loved books and then I could ground myself. It was so unexpectedly kind. I will never forget it. I found out later she was so gruff and short with us because she'd been teaching for a long ass time and kids are mean. She had some sort of health condition that left her in pain most of the time and she had to use a cane which caused her to hunch a bit. Over the years all the meanness of the kids made her a little hard and cold, but she really did care about her students. Gruff and cold with a heart of gold. Senior year I was placed in a freshman typing class. Everyone else was chatty and goofed off, but I wanted to learn to type, so I really put in a lot of effort. I only had 2 classes in the morning, and the rest of the day I was a waitress, as I was pretty much on my own in my senior year. I got called into work on the day of our class final, so I went to work and missed the final. When I showed up to class the next day, I apologized to the teacher for missing the final. He asked me, "Do you want to know the grade you got?" When I replied yes, he said, "I gave you an A because if you had been here, that's what you would have gotten." I never forgot that. Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. Edit. Thank you for asking a question that gave me the opportunity to share a great experience. I was really shocked when I checked Reddit after work. I did not expect much. I was just sharing a fond memory, but it's really fun when something blows up. You made his old lady's day. Thank you. Edit 2. I'm beyond thrilled at the awards. Y'all rock. Bro, that's a different kind of teacher. When I look back, I remember him coming into the Denny's I worked at early on Sunday mornings. He told me he had a side job for the San Francisco Chronicle delivering the Sunday paper to my rural hometown. I think he knew we were both trying really hard to navigate our then situations. Me supporting myself my senior year of high school. Him with a second job. A mutual respect, so to speak. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but I have often wondered. This was in 1979. I don't think that would happen today. Edit. I think it was the last half of my senior year, which would make it 1980. I faked my way through 4th and 5th grade math. I never understood how to do long division, but managed to hide that from the teachers and answer test questions by reverse multiplication. Basically get a number and multiply it out and see how close I would get, and keep doing until I got the answer. My 6th grade math teacher figured out that I was faking, and had no idea how to actually divide anything. She had me come in one afternoon to help with cleaning the erasers. All the kids fought for this privilege, so I was thrilled. Sat me down and tutored me until I grasped the concept. Bless you, Mrs. Gillespie. Basically get a number and multiply it out and see how close I would get, and keep doing until I got the answer. That's not faking, you discovered binary search, lol. I mean, their guesses weren't necessarily in the middle of any set of numbers. It's the same idea as binary search. But if I just showed someone a process where I guessed randomly and kept correcting it, they wouldn't call that binary search. The professor I had for my Calculus 100 class in university was awesome. He was a good teacher and funny and engaging. If it was a first year class with over 100 people in it, I was just a face in a big crowd. I was on campus after hours a couple years after I graduated. They run programs for kids in the evenings and was dropping off my oldest. And I saw him. He stopped, looked at me hard, and said, "First name, last name, not a bad student, not great, but definitely not bad," and kept walking. This was a good 6 years after I graduated. Absolutely amazed he would have remembered me at all after teaching how many hundreds of students in between. And that is just crazy. I had the opposite with my high school band director. When I was a senior in high school, I was walking down the hall with two of my friends who were also in band. At this point, I had been in band with this teacher for almost 4 years, saw him every day, and had one-on-one auditions and regular individual performance exams with him. He saw us walking by and greeted us, "Hey John. Hey Jennifer. Hey," drawing a complete blank on my name. I didn't take it too personally. He was really nice, but he was one of those people who was really focused on the music to the exclusion of everything else and was kind of flaky. I wouldn't be surprised if he identified us all in his head by our instruments and the sound of our playing first and faces and names a distant second. LOL. I know a couple band directors like this for sure. At my high school, we had an annual week-long science trip, fully paid for by fundraising. Only 4 people were selected to go each year. My sophomore year, I was chosen. I knew there was no way I was going to be allowed to go. I had never been out of the state, never been on a single vacation, never been on a plane, and never been away from home for more than 24 hours. My parents were incredibly conservative and immediately said no. I had a science teacher who just didn't accept the no. Instead of just giving up and selecting someone else, he called and tried to convince my parents. When that didn't work, he came to my house and had dinner with my family to convince my dad that I would be an asset and he would be doing me a disservice by not letting me go. He sat and ate my mom's terrible cooking and talked to my parents for over 2 hours until he got a real think about it. Then he just kept following up. I had never had someone in my corner like that before, who was willing to go to bat for me like that. He wore them down and it was the best week of my teenage life. I'd never seen the ocean. 20 years later and I can still recall every detail of that trip. It was a major pivot point for me. This story hit home a bit for me. It's really great you got to have that awesome experience. Thanks. I hope it hit home in a good way. I've always felt incredibly blessed to have had such a great teacher. There are so many other stories from his class too, but this was by far the biggest. Had a high school art teacher who would let me stay in his classroom during lunches. Always gave me half his sandwich and other extra food because he knew I didn't eat much otherwise. Edit. He would also keep a drawer in the classroom stocked with snacks so that I could swing by and grab something between classes if I needed. No, he never did anything questionable. And no, I never fell asleep after eating the sandwiches. He was just a kind person. My teacher did the opposite. I had too much food and always took my peanut butter sandwich. Probably because the kid next to me was allergic, but what a beach. When my youngest was in middle school, he used to arm wrestle teachers for their lunches. It lasted less than a week, though. Word got around fast. I called somebody stupid once when they got a question wrong and the teacher instantly made me stand up and spell stupid backwards. Got it wrong with the pressure and learned a lesson that day. Memorize stupid backwards before calling someone else stupid. Got it? Just turn around, facing the other way, and just spell it normal. Edit. This comment, right here. I'll never figure out how Reddit works. I can't remember what I did, but in first grade my teacher got mad at me and said, "You wanna act like a baby? Fine, come over here." She made me sit in a corner on the floor and gave me 2 little toys to play with. That must have been nice. Oh, and embarrassing. Yeah, it was embarrassing but funny. She would yell at me, "Keep playing," if I looked up to see what everyone else was doing, haha. Called my mum while she was at work to tell her I'd written one of the best things he'd ever seen as a teacher. This is one of the most fun things to do. OFFS, what has he done now? Oh. When I was a kid, I'd sometimes have teachers tell my mom about good things I'd done in their class. She'd argue with them and tell them I wasn't as good as they were claiming I was. I got a lot of sympathy from some of my teachers. It helped me more than I think they realized. My physics teacher in high school hosted an annual trip to Walt Disney World in Orlando for 15-20 kids for over a week. I was one of the better and most interested students in his class. He was an incredible teacher who found examples in physics everywhere. He also used to work for Disney prior to teaching. Since my family was not so well off and I could not afford the trip to Walt Disney World, I declined when he asked me if I was going to join. He probed a bit and he somehow found the funds to have me join without me even inquiring. I don't know if he pulled school money or there was a surplus, but either way, that was one of my best memories from that school. I still keep in touch with him 15 years later. There was no school money or surplus. This man paid for the trip out of his own pocket because he's a rock star. The teachers are awesome. I bet this is the case. My school's marching band somehow got invited to play at Disneyland. While the school was in a wealthy city, a quarter of us kids there were from an area that was very much not. When they asked us band members for the money for the flight, hotel and food were included, I remember very sheepishly talking to the teacher afterwards to say I couldn't go. I knew we didn't have spare money, so I didn't even bother bringing the letter home. I figured I'd just fake being sick, like I usually did when I was asked to go somewhere that I would have to pay to go. My mom was more than a little surprised when she got a call later that week that I was flying to California. The teacher had paid it himself. Thanks, Mr. Melker. In my senior year, my English teacher asked me if I was manic depressive after turning in a personal essay, only for me to get diagnosed with bipolar disorder a week later. How can they diagnose a person from a paper? I know people who are told they are schizophrenic have the best painting that are so unusual. The paper was supposed to be about a turning point in our lives, so I wrote about my psychotic depression, which was followed by psychotic mania. My diagnosis before was depression and I knew about the symptoms of bipolar disorder, but I didn't connect the dots until she said something. She's an older lady, so maybe she has had someone close to her that has bipolar and saw similarities. She didn't say she thought I had it. She just asked if I was already diagnosed. She took every phone call no matter the time of night while I was in rehab. If it wasn't for her being there in my lowest time, I probably would not be here today. You should let her know that, if you haven't already. Red heart. I tell her every time I speak to her. This teacher was extremely strict, hated by my class, but loved me because I was one of the few who respected her and did well in her class. When school ended, she gave me a crystal bear, nothing too fancy or expensive, but I felt as if I was glowing leaving that classroom with bear in my hand. I still have it and will treasure it forever. You know, usually a strict teacher is a whole lot more nice when people follow the rules. Honestly, I was so tired of hearing all the other kids in my grade whine and talk shit about our teachers while blatantly disrespecting them and giving them a hard time, e.g., not doing work, not studying for a test, and then saying the teacher sucks at their job, trying to be a smartass every time the teacher asks them a question. When the teachers treat me fine, I got called a teacher's pet, or was accused of having an inappropriate relationship with the teacher. But really the teacher is just doing their job and I'm doing what a student is supposed to do. It's really not that hard. While I don't doubt that some nasty teachers really do exist, I'm positive like 90% of them are actually pretty decent if you just followed the rules and did the work. I was anorexic when I was in school. She took me aside after class and told me that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing to myself, I was going to die. That my body was going to start shutting down. My organs would fail. That it would not be beautiful and I was going to die an awful and painful death. I still catch myself slipping back into that mindset 10 years later sometimes. But I will never forget that. She saved my life.